Okay, so it's like time for us to but to get into Cable versus X-Men. Now, technically, there is a prelude that kind of leads into the actual battle between these two characters. Now, this was really huge for Marvel Comics, and the reason why, because Cable was really popular in the 1990s, but then out of nowhere, you had Marvel introduce another version of the character who came from a different reality, and that version has all the potential that Cable could have been if he did not have the techno-organic virus. And so we're going to cover Cable issue number 29 and X-Men issue number 13 because, like I said, these two issues are really more like the prelude that leads into the actual battle between the two characters. And so as we get into issue number 29, we really pick up with Cable kind of looking at this horribly drawn picture of Nate Gray. And for Cable, he kind of realized that this other version of himself have already met a few other people in his life. Charles Xavier, Moira McTaggart, and I guess you can go ahead and say the Sugar Man as well. And so for Cable, he kind of realized this is somebody he has to find very soon. Now, while you have Cable kind of looking at this picture, you see Cable look outside to see his team, X-Force. They're out there training, getting ready for their next mission down the road. But then out of nowhere, you didn't have Blacksmith arrive. Now, for Blacksmith, just like Cable, he's also from the far future and part of the Askani clan. Now, for Blacksmith, a very powerful psychic, and so you have him being able to walk out and block the minds of all the different members of X-Force to kind of make sure they won't be able to remember that he was even there. Now, he then runs into Sunspot, and this is a callback to an earlier storyline because for Sunspot, he was kind of this evil person known as Rainfire. And so what Cable did was he reached deep in the mind of Sunspot to get rid of that other personality. The problem is that for Sunspot, he had now gained the ability to speak Askani. And so for Blacksmith, he's kind of like, one, I'm not able to block your mind like I want to, and two, how in the world are you able to speak Askani? Now for Cable, he's not really ready to tell Blacksmith how that's even possible at all. He says, hey, come inside because now time for us to have our meeting. Now, this is a small meeting, so you have Cable, Blacksmith, Charles Xavier, Moira McTaggart, Cyclops, Jean Grey, and also Storm. Now, with all these different characters coming together, of course, they're here to talk about Nate Gray because for Charles and Moira McTaggart, they had some run-ins with Nate Gray, but also Moira McTaggart was able to kind of run a few tests on Nate and kind of realize how powerful he truly is. That apparently he's so powerful he rivals the Phoenix when it came to, well, the fake version of Jean Grey being the Phoenix. But either way, it's them saying like he's really powerful, that he's everything Cable could have been if Cable did not have the techno-organic virus. Now, with all that being said, it was also Moira McTaggart who also realized that Nate is dying. When it came to Sinister in the other reality, better known as Age of Apocalypse, he made Nate Gray powerful enough to take down Apocalypse, but he also made sure there was a safe way to deal with Nate Gray just in case he gets too powerful. So for example, his own powers are slowly killing him off, which matter of fact, he should die by the age of 21. Now, for Blacksmith, he went out of his way to block the minds of himself and also Cable to have a private conversation. Now, Jean Grey and Charles, they had quickly picked up on that. And so you had Charles kind of realize they're trying to hide something here. And the thing is, they're kind of right, but not really. And let me explain, because for Charles Xavier and Jean Grey, they're right because Blacksmith's trying to hide something, but not really Cable. Because the Blacksmith, this is Askani business, which means no one else should be involved. And the only reason why he is saying that because Nate Gray is technically Cable, but from a different reality. But also Cable right now is on some kind of path the Askanis had put him on. And so it's Blacksmith saying, no, You have to handle him. They cannot get involved. And so he used his powers to alter the minds of Charles Xavier, Jean Grey, Jean Grey, Cyclops, Morbid, Taggart, and Storm to make them believe they came together to talk about the legacy virus. But in reality, that's not the case. Now, the book also tells us that sooner or later, Cyclops and Jean Grey are going to remember the original reason why they came here for a meeting. But for Cable, he's kind of like, fine, I'll go ahead and go after Nate Gray by myself. But I'm telling you right now, Blacksmith, this kind of ends the whole idea of you and I working together. And the reason why, because Cable realized that for Blacksmith, he has been tracking Nate Gray for a while, which means Blacksmith could have told Cable a while back, but Blacksmith did not do that. And so for Cable, it's kind of like you had just broken the trust we had between one another. But either way, for Cable, he's now on the hunt for Nate Gray. Now, this kind of leads us over to X-Men issue number 13. Now, with issue number 13, we pick up with a character known as Trinity. Now, when it comes to Trinity, she has this ability where she's able to feel the energy of somebody dying. And when she does absorb the energy from that person, she's then able to release that energy as some kind of powerful blast. Now, we met her a while back in our coverage over the X-Men, where you technically had the X-Men hand her over to Mr. Sinister, where he did help her. But the problem is that once you're part of Sinister's plan, he will never let you go until he feels like you're basically useless to him. And so when it came to Sinister, she realized she had to escape, which she did. But the problem is that she's now being followed by his soldiers, better known as the Marauders. Now, for Nate Gray, he's also in Paris, and so is Trinity as well. But for Nate Gray, it's really more of him trying to figure out what is his next move, but at the same time, try to fully understand how to control his feelings. Because remember, he was created in another reality, better known as Age of Apocalypse. But on top of that as well, when it came to Sinister creating him, he kind of aged him up. And so for Nate Gray, he was not really able to fully understand how to be a person and have a normal conversation with somebody, but to also handle his feelings. Now, on top of that, for Nate Gray, he found out by Moore Taggart that he's going to die. And so it's him trying to understand when that is going to happen, because his powers are killing him off slowly. But while you have Nate Gray thinking, he does pick on somebody calling out to him, and that would be Trinity. But for him, he believes it's Madeline Pryor calling out for him. But then he sees a huge explosion. Now, once he does find Trinity in that explosion, he also finds the Marauders. Now, this is where he learns that in this reality, there's also a Mr. Sinister. But in his reality, Sinister died. And matter of fact, before he did die, he had killed off Nate's version of Forge, who was kind of like a father to him. And so to kind of this reality to find out that technically Sinister is still alive, it really does bother him a lot. But he also kind of gets the picture that in this reality, Mr. Sinister is still a bad person. And so you have Nate go out of his way to protect Trinity against the Marauders. Now, there is one member of the team who does kind of mess with the powers of Nate, and that would be Scrambler. But with him trying to do that to Nate Gray, it does cause a huge explosion right in the middle of the city. Now, that huge explosion was also seen by Madeline Pryor. Now, in the earlier parts of our coverage over X-Men, he found Madeline. And matter of fact, he fell in love with her. And she kind of fell in love with him. But she was taken away by Selene for Selene's personal plans. And so, unfortunately, even though she sees the battle happening across the city, she does not go out of her way to reunite with Nate at all. She stays with Selene. Now, the rest of this issue is really more of us just seeing Nate Gray just going off against all the different members of the Marauders, to the point where you technically have Nate killing every single one of them off except for one one does survive. But for the rest of Marauders, they have been officially killed off. And you have Nate being able to leave with Trinity to go somewhere else. But here's the thing, because like I said, this is a prelude. Because right after you have Nate and her walk away, well, Cable was nearby. It's Cable following the powers of Nate Gray, hoping to find him very soon and take care of this situation between the two characters. But this is where we're going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.